And welcome back to the Wellness Paradox podcast. I'm so grateful that you can join us on this journey towards greater human flourishing. As always, I'm your host, Michael Stack, an exercise physiologist by training and a health entrepreneur and a health educator by trade. And I'm fascinated by a phenomena I call the wellness paradox. This paradox, as I view it, is the gap in interaction and collaboration between our medical and other allied health professionals and our fitness and wellness professionals. This podcast is all about closing off that gap by disseminating the latest, most evidence-based, and most engaging information in the health sciences. And to do that today, we're joined by Lily Allen-Duenas. Lily is not only a yoga instructor internationally and also as a podcast, but is a marketing expert. And that's what we're going to talk about on this podcast, specifically some of the best practices for marketing and building a community on Instagram. And I know as I say this, there's probably a number of you that are listening that have very much an aversion towards maybe all social media, but particularly something like Instagram in light of a lot of the media that's came out lately regarding Facebook and what they knew and what they didn't know about some of the deleterious health effects of their platform. But the reality is that social media, if done properly, can be used as a tool for good. And it's a very critical tool to getting our message out there, not just to the stakeholders that we want to work with, our clients and our patients, but also to medical and other allied health professionals who are on a number of these platforms. Now, we're going to talk about Instagram during this conversation, but a lot of the principles that Lily talks about can be applied to the other platforms, depending on where your audience and where your community is. I think that Lily provides an interesting perspective because, yes, she's a marketing professional, trained at the collegiate level to learn that in the classroom and then also apply it into the corporate world, which is great. And having that academic background, I think, is highly important. But she also is a wellness professional, given the fact that she is a yoga instructor. So she can filter her marketing perspective through the lens of what we deal with as fitness and wellness professionals, which I think makes her perspective slightly unique and definitely, I think, makes this conversation more actionable for all of you. Now, Lily gave us a lot of information. In many cases, you may want to follow up with her on some of the resources that she mentioned. And we're going to link up to all of that on the show notes page, which you can find by going to wellnessparadoxpod.com/episode 28. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Lily Allen-Duenas. Today, we're joined by Lily Allen-Duenas all the way from France. Lily, thank you so much for joining us today on the Wellness Paradox.
Thanks, Mike. I'm so happy to be here.
This is going to be a fun conversation today. We're actually going to talk a little bit about marketing on Instagram, but through the lens of a fitness and wellness professional that is actually very involved, not only in yoga, but also in podcasting as well. So it's nice to have a fellow podcaster to probably commiserate with on some level. But to start, Lily, let's just talk a little bit more about your background, just to give our listeners some context.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in California and then I went to the University of Iowa and I got my degree there. And after that, I moved to Greece very briefly on an art fellowship teaching art, then returned to Iowa and worked in marketing management. So I did some marketing management actually for the university and then transitioned to in the arts, in an arts nonprofit role. So I was doing marketing for about 7 years. And then after that, I transitioned to being an international yoga teacher and meditation teacher, as well as being a digital nomad. So I was doing some brand stewardship, some social media management, copywriting, graphic design, kind of all of the elements of marketing that it's all the hats you have to wear, especially in nonprofit work. So I got to do some of the digital nomad work. And now that I live in France with my husband, I continue to do work with clients, do freelance work, as well as, of course, teaching yoga and meditation as well.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by your background because certainly this is a podcast for fitness and wellness professionals, not for marketing professionals. I'm curious what led you down the path towards yoga, and your podcast that you mentioned to me was about you're interviewing yoga teachers and meditation teachers around the globe. So this is something that obviously you're very passionate about. Tell us a little bit more about that part of your journey.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I've always been, I think, very focused on health and wellness. I was a 5K a day type of girl for a few years there, and kind of a gym, an avid gym goer as well, kind of doing 2-a-days and classes and working out probably 7 days a week, with a 2-a-day in there. So I'd get a day off, but I've always been into health and wellness. It was when I actually first started doing yoga, though, when I was 16. A gym in California offered it, and I just checked it out and kind of fell in love. I felt like I was coming home.
Mhm.
So in university, I took classes every week. And then when I got into my marketing profession, oh, I immediately wanted to do everything. I wanted to develop every skill I could develop. And I also really believe very strongly in community service. So I was serving on multiple boards of directors in the Creative Corridor in Iowa. So in Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, North Liberty, Marion, and in this area, I was commissioning murals from international artists, and I was serving with the United Way, doing this Time for Art type of fundraising events. I was doing everything I could for the community, for work, friends, relationship, all that stuff too. So I think I just burned myself out. I was working a little too fast paced, too hard. And with that burnout came a huge need for self-care and for kind of realigning. So when I did some soul searching, spending about a year, like really trying to find the answer, what am I supposed to do with my life? What's the most meaningful work I can do? I came across, and just in my heart, the inner voice saying, it's time to be a yoga teacher. It's time to really help others on their journey towards health and wellness and wholeness, and coming home to themselves. And then also helping them any way I can with tools and tips, strategies, techniques, from Buddhism, I'm a vegan nutritionist. I am certified in prenatal, postnatal yoga. I've done certifications in yoga, psychology, and philosophy. Like there's so many different elements that I try to incorporate when I'm teaching or working with clients privately, to just help as much as I can them recenter, reground, and then build back up from breakdown to breakthrough, right? And thank you so much, Mike, also for mentioning my podcast. I'll just mention that I am the founder of the Wild Yoga Tribe. It's a global community of yoga teachers, yoga students, anybody on the path interested in yoga and meditation. And then I am the host of the Wild Yoga Tribe podcast, where each week I interview a yoga teacher from a different country around the world about their journey, their yoga philosophy and psychology, methodology, all that fun stuff. So it is the highlight of my week.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know about you, but the reason that I started my podcast is just because I wanted to talk to a bunch of really cool people and kind of have a formal excuse to do it. And I think that that's the best part about being able to have a podcast like this, is just to be able to have great conversations with diverse people.
Yeah, it really is such a gift. It's amazing to get to learn from people and share stories and get opinions, because I know I benefit like crazy from these conversations. So I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, so we're gonna switch gears a little bit, and we're gonna talk about, I guess, what your first profession is, which is as a marketing professional, and this is an area that I see a lot of need for in the fitness and wellness space, and there's a lot of different directions that we can go with this conversation, but certainly coming out of COVID. Those of us that are still here in the industry, which, unfortunately, and I don't know to what extent the statistics, back here in the States, in France, but we've had close to 22% of gyms and fitness centers in the United States close. The state I'm in, Michigan, we've had 27% of our gyms and fitness centers close. So the industry has contracted quite a bit, but that's also opened up the opportunity to acquire and gain new market share that didn't exist before. So this is a very interesting time to be thinking about marketing and messaging. And we're here to talk about Instagram in particular. And my first question to you is, why are we starting with Instagram? Saying this as a 41-year-old guy who largely knows, Facebook and LinkedIn pretty well. Why are we starting with Instagram?
That's a great question. And I think that, well, when I mention to people, okay, which social media platforms are you on, or how are you feeling about social media, when I'm talking with different webinars or groups in a similar environment, but with participants who are there with me live, usually they feel completely overwhelmed and they cannot decide which one to focus on. And they instead are just very minimally committing to all of them. And I think that's a big error for us to make. And it can just hurt our whole workflow and our stress levels if we're trying to do everything. And if you really need to meet your followers, your community where they are. So if you think that you are your niche, I don't know, niche, I'm always on the fence on those, but your niche, if your niche is, how about we say 30-year-old to 40-year-old professionals who are struggling with back pain, and that's your target audience is back pain. And so you're thinking, okay, it's probably professionals in office jobs that I really want to work with. I would love to do chair yoga, or I'd love to do lunchtime workout sessions and strategies on Zoom, for office environments with free weights, body weights, whatever your target is, you have to meet them where they are. So that's definitely LinkedIn. Or if you are going to be doing, you have an app, a fitness app, and you want to be doing, high power intensity, 5-minute burst workouts, and you really want to be marketing that, go to TikTok. And you want to be working with Gen Z and as young as you can get, go to TikTok. So why I kind of am focusing on Instagram today, Mike, is because I think there's a lot that has changed always with all social media platforms, but they've made some really big announcements in the last just 2 months, in September 2021 and October 2021, or November. I wasn't sure exactly when that last announcement came out, but right at the end of the month or the beginning of November. And I think it's really important to talk about the changes as well as Instagram Reels. And that's not brand new, but I think there's a lot of misunderstanding out there about how to utilize it. And then it does transfer over towards just video content in general, as well as TikTok, or if that's something you're interested in getting in. Pinterest is even doing videos. I feel like there's a lot of crossover, but that's why we're choosing Instagram today.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I think your first point, is well taken, is that you do need to know your audience and you do need to know where they're at. And I think that Instagram, particularly based on what you said, it seems like as good of a place to start as any. I would assume, though, as we go through this conversation, some of the concepts, if not most of the concepts, will cut across all the platforms to a great extent.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot will we can talk about value and community and different types of content that you can be thinking about creating, just creative content and storytelling. And I think that's universal. So I think so.
Great. Well, so let's talk about some of these changes that Instagram has made recently, because in all honesty, I don't even know the changes, and I'm doing things on Instagram. So if nothing else, selfishly, I'm curious to know what these changes are.
Sweet. All right, let's dive in. So also, if you are listening and you have a pen or you have some way to take notes, I'll do my best not to rush through anything here with Mike, but let's jot some notes down or be prepared maybe to just to take some notes. Yeah. I'll move fast maybe, but hopefully not too fast. So at the end of the month, as I said, in October 2021, maybe it was beginning of November, Instagram announced that now in your stories, even if you don't have 10,000 followers, you can have links. That swipe up feature, I think we're all pretty familiar with, was not available to anybody, any account that had less than 10,000 followers. They were finally graciously allowing now any account to have that linking feature. They removed the swipe up, and instead it's going to be a sticker. If you were putting the location, the date, or a nice smiley face, a sticker, it'll be right there just as a link sticker. So that was the latest announcement. And then in September of 2021, they did announce that, of course, it's been an argument for the ages, but the amount of hashtags that is recommended is 3 to 5, while you can have up to 30, and it's not going to do any good. In fact, their actual account, Instagram, said adding 10 to 20 hashtags will not help you gain additional distribution. So they were very firm in that if you add 10 or 20, it's not going to help. they're only going to be prioritizing 3 to 5. So I have a lot of clients tell me, all right, okay, 3 to 5, that's a little scarier, a little more pressure. How do I pick them? So you're going to be wanting to look for hashtags that have less than 500,000 of usages. And you can see that if you go to type it in, and it'll tell you 2.5 million or 100, 200, it'll let you know. There's also some different softwares that you can use to review this in a better fashion if you don't like looking at the app for too long. But under 500,000, yeah, that's going to be your goal. So I never personally, for my account, Wild Yoga Tribe, I never use hashtag yoga. I would use hashtag yin yoga. It's more specific. Or I would say hashtag mindful meditations, or hashtag vipassana, or whatever you think would be more targeted. Just pay attention to the numbers under 500,000. So the other thing they did mention about hashtags, and this was again another announcement in September 2021, was that the hashtag should be definitely 200 million% put in the caption. People were always arguing, do I put my hashtags in my comments to make my caption look cleaner and slicker? No, you're going to be putting that in the caption, because if it's in the comments, the algorithm will not be distributing that in the search function. So if I'm searching hashtag yoga in Michigan, I'm searching that, and that hashtag was just in somebody's comment or my comment, it would never be found. But if I use that in my caption, then it would still be distributed. So I think those were really important for kind of, they finally put the icing on the cake. They made their announcement. They said, this is how we're treating hashtags. And I would advise all listeners out there, if you're on Instagram, to follow Instagram's actual account. It's called Creators. It's a plural word. So it's @creators. And that's where Instagram creators and the whole Instagram team makes these announcements. They post tips, info, statistics, advice. They do reels, reports, even on Instagram Reels, which I know we'll get into. So they give you popular music tracks to use. They give you all these different types of practices to follow. And they're delivered, of course, in their Instagram's lovely, aesthetically pleasing graphics. So follow @creators for sure.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. Like I'm not taking notes right now because I want to focus on interviewing you, but I think I'm going to be going back and replaying this. So let's go back to the hashtag thing really quick. And this is probably, partly just my general ignorance on things related to Instagram. But I think I'm not alone with some of the people who are listening. So you talk about 3 to 5 hashtags, and you talk about finding, I think you said it was half a million. Was that the number you said? So, and I can infer that that's just because if it's more than that, there's just too much noise and the likelihood of getting seen is minimal. How do you go about choosing those appropriate hashtags? And I'm sure that you could probably do a podcast of 3 hours on that alone, but is there some general best practices on that? Because that seems like it's very important in light of the fact that it was just a recent announcement made, and it's one of the first things you're bringing up.
Good point. Yes, I think that it's dependent on what your goal is and what you're trying to achieve and accomplish with that specific post. So usually if I'm writing on something very specific, like yoga for scoliosis, and that's a post that I'm really focusing, I'm all about back pain. That's my mission. That's my purpose. Then I'm going to be using these specific hashtags, like yoga for scoliosis would be a hashtag, or hashtag scoliosis treatment or relief, like these specific words. So that's going to be very specific to the post itself. And then you might have one hashtag that you use every single time that would be specific to your brand or to your state, to your location, to the gym that you work at. So you're going to be wanting to make sure that the people who are in that actual community you're in, if you're serving a specific geolocated community, are going to be able to find you. But when it comes to these 3 to 5, you're right, it's super important. There's a lot of value in having them specifically chosen and strategized. I really do recommend more of a little analysis. So try different hashtags and then kind of evaluate how successful those posts were if you noticed any change whatsoever. Just give it a try a few out, but definitely don't do hashtag anything over 500,000. Try to keep it under 500,000. As you said, too much noise. It's too saturated. And I recommend, if you, again, are serving a community, to do something specific to that location.
That's great. Yeah, very helpful. And again, I think I've just kind of indiscriminately chosen hashtags that I think sound good. And I think that's probably what a lot of people do. Like, hey, this sounds like a good thing to say here without the actual analysis that you talked about. Now, when you talk about actually trying different hashtags, is that a suggestion? Try different hashtags and see the reach that the post gets. Is that essentially the metric you're looking at there to a degree?
Yeah, see the reach. But also if you on Instagram, I recommend to all the listeners who have any account, even if you just have a personal account that you want to use a little bit more professionally to market your brand, switch your whole account to a professional. It is free. It takes maybe 2 minutes, and it's on the Instagram app itself on your phone. You just switch it over. If you have it set that you're an entrepreneur versus you can choose a million different categories saying you're a car dealership or you're a school. But if you choose entrepreneur, you have a little bit more, from what I've heard and what creators has kind of said in the past, that you have a little bit more access to a few different things. So I recommend usually people just choose entrepreneur. You can hide that as well. No one has to see that's what you're listed as. But if maybe something has changed, I definitely haven't looked that up in the last 2 months. So that's what I would recommend. And then there's a lot of metrics that you can view in the professional account in that suite with those analytics. So you can review your post, you can review which hashtags you use, and I think you can review even specifically how many people were able to find you from those, I think. But I recommend trial and error, dig deeper, but it's not, of course, as important as the quality of content you're producing. So it is secondary. I brought up hashtags because it was the latest announcements, but of course, it's what you're actually doing with your account, your message, your storytelling, your branding, and how valuable your content is, or entertaining, informational. There's different elements too. So maybe we should mention a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, yeah, I absolutely think so. Again, I think all these little tips and tricks are great, but if there's not substance there, but I think the quick review is really important. One, these algorithms are changing over the time, all the time. I know. I mean, I've been in business with my fitness facility business here in Michigan for 15 years now, and it's just crazy. Well, first off, 15 years ago, Instagram, at least to my recollection, didn't even exist. But like the algorithms for all these change all the time. So that creator's account, I think, is a really important thing for people to follow. And I think being strategic about hashtags and having a little bit of a science-based approach to trial and error, I think is great. But yeah, let's get into the content side of this. And this is an interesting area for people, because I think a lot of fitness and wellness professionals, to some degree, have an aversion to social media. And I think certainly, Facebook or Meta or whatever they're called as of today, they certainly haven't helped themselves lately with a lot of the bad press that has came out, and the congressional testimony and all that. So I think the platform certainly can be used for good, or it can be used for bad. And we're obviously here to talk about how it could be used for good. And a lot of that centers around the content. So this is a big topic, and I'll just kind of pass the baton over to you to figure out where to actually start this conversation around content.
Thank you so much, Mike, for bringing that up. What's happening in the news and what's happening with Facebook's the controversial areas kind of surrounding that. I don't want to dive into it. Of course, that's not the purpose. As you said, it's to use social media and in a way that feels authentic, and it resonates, and it provides value. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But I do want to express, if you have any kind of social media anxiety or the aversion also that you mentioned, you're not alone. I recommend always self-care first, you come first. It's very beneficial for brands and for companies to have social media presence. It builds trust. It also it just helps with visibility, searchability. There's a lot of value. So I hope that my tips kind of help you feel like you can have a little better relationship with it. I always recommend setting a timer. Just be on social media. If you're doing it for work, just 15 minutes. There's a quote, don't post and ghost. So don't just post something and immediately leave. You're going to want to make sure you're interacting with your community, because I don't think of anybody as a follower. That feels very, it doesn't resonate. Like I'm not some that people should be just following me. I would like to think of them as my community. And so you're not going to be using your social media as just an advertising platform to be blasting out your promotions, your merchandise, or advertising for sponsors. That doesn't feel good. Nobody really likes to feel spammed at or yelled at or blasted in that type of way. There's a way, of course, to sell that doesn't feel slimy. And I think that's usually by providing value. And what do I mean by value? There's a few different kind of buckets, if you will, that I think your social media content can fall into, that it's valuable. And of course, I love talking about entertaining content. It can be funny, it can be inspiring, it can be even a little educational, but usually that entertaining element is a bucket I like to think about. You can also, you can have share resources and hacks and how-tos. So really go into those education element. And in that bucket, people actually, it's super random, but they love to be told what not to do. There's some statistics out there that says if you are telling people 5 things not to do when you're doing a deadlift, it will actually trend higher than when you're saying 5 tips to doing a deadlift correctly. So people kind of like to be discovering what they're doing wrong, and that's even more powerful. If you're solving people's problems, if you're provoking conversation or even requesting feedbacks or opinions, that's a great way to be using it as well. I do, as I said, just recommend just 15 minutes a day. Don't post and ghost, as I said, because the actual algorithm for Facebook and for Instagram, it actually favors relationships over anything else. And I know that sounds weird. Let me explain. So relationships are king on social media. So that means if I'm on my account, Wild Yoga Tribe, if I'm always watching puppy videos and kitty videos, and that's all I'm doing, I'm just scrolling, I can be liking, I can be commenting, but if that's how I'm engaging, then that's what they're going to think I'm there to do. And so they're going to even show my yoga posts to more cat people or people who have cat accounts. So you have to be really careful not to, with an account that's professionally treated, or you have a goal in mind with it, you need to be talking to people who you want to be your community. You need to be commenting and supporting, answering questions. I know not a single comment should ever go unanswered. And the best way to answer a comment is actually with a question. I love when someone says, what a beautiful place to practice yoga. That's their comment. And then I'll say, where's your favorite place to practice yoga? Turn the question on them, turn it into a conversation, show you're interested. And I love my community. I want to know how they're doing and what questions they have, and I want to serve them. And I think that's how I show up in a way that feels authentic. But if I do have something to advertise, the kind of rule of thumb is 80-20. It's going to be 80% really valuable, high quality content, and then 20% more of, hey, have you checked out my latest podcast episode? Something a little bit more quote unquote advertising related. So I think those are some of the main things I wanted to bring up, but I would love also to say, do not get obsessed with the number of people who are in your community or quote unquote followers. If you're just obsessing with the fact that you have 600 followers, and think about how hard it's going to be to serve a community of 10,000 or 20,000 followers. If you don't feel like you're connecting and you're really being with them, right, with feedback and opinions and conversations, then don't focus on that. Just focus on really serving your community of 600. And make sure you're not marketing to all people. Focus on that niche. Focus on finding the right messaging to find the right people. That's, I think, so important.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really glad you talked about that 80-20 rule in terms of providing value to asking for business. Episode 24, we interviewed John Berardi, who is the former founder and CEO of Precision Nutrition, which he subsequently sold. And I don't know if you've ever seen any of PN's content, but for me, PN was always an amazing resource because they just gave and they gave and they gave so many free things. And then whenever one of my team members, one of my trainers needed a nutrition certification, I didn't even need a call to action from Precision Nutrition because they built so much value. I just said, oh man, PN, all these handouts you guys have been looking at forever, like they're the company that produces them, go to them. And so they acquired my business by not asking for it at all. They just acquired it by building value over the course of years.
Yeah, exactly. And years, I think that's also important for your listeners to hear that this is a slow game. It is not a sprint. It does take a lot of time to produce this content. It's graphics, it's captions, it's writing the content as well, like really thinking, what do I want to share and what's meaningful? It takes a lot of self-inquiry, self-awareness, brand awareness, and then social listening. Not just monitoring, not just analyzing. You have to be listening to the needs of your community.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that because it kind of leads me to my next two questions. And I'm just trying to decide which one I want to ask first. Okay, I'll ask the easier one first, which is everything you just said sounds complicated to a degree, right? Like, and I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, man, I'm a personal trainer at a gym in, Dearborn, Michigan. And like, I want to start posting on Instagram. You just said a lot of stuff that makes me think I'm not ready to do this. How do you recommend somebody dips their toe into the water without becoming too overwhelmed by everything you just said?
Great question. I feel really, really, really happy you asked that, because it can be so overwhelming and it can feel like I have to learn so many new things. It's going to be so hard. I think my favorite place to start usually is just by poking around Instagram itself on some brands that are doing something similar to you. You're a personal trainer in Dearborn. So check out a personal trainer in a city near you, or in Dearborn itself, of course, but just be looking right around you at people who are quote unquote your competitors. I again, not a word I love, but I think that's good to really kind of take a peek and do this a little analysis in the space that you're in, and check out what kind of value they're offering, what they're selling. It's a process of figuring out how to get your message in that space. So after you spend a little time reflecting, I also think it's a great exercise to write down 10 brands that you would dream of working with. And then look at these brands and look at their audiences and their content. And then think about, okay, how can I find these audiences online? What type of offerings do they need? What can I offer? How can I speak to them? Think about how also your relationship can develop with them on their pain points, like back pain, stress. There's, of course, different elements, but I think it can be helpful, again, to think about how you can help. What pain points can you serve? And then you can, of course, talk to people you know and you like and you trust, and just get feedback from them. What do they think? I think doing a vision board, thinking of 10 adjectives or 5 adjectives you want people to describe you as. Do you want to be the motivational, inspirational, kind of the cheerleader of the fitness world? Do you want to be so uplifting? Is that your message? Or is it, I want to be really tough and grit and intensity? Like what resonates? What feels good? If you need some adjectives, you guys are welcome to email me at wildyogatribe@gmail.com. I have a list because I help brands sometimes move through this creative process as well. I love helping people know more about themselves. And so I have a nice little checklist that you can go through and circle which ones you think would resonate. If it doesn't feel good to you, welcome to reach out anytime. So I think doing that back work before you actually get started is important. And then if you just take that step back and then you think about, okay, how am I comfortable sharing myself and my story with the community? That's also mental health, right? That's so important. Your boundaries are so important. Make sure you make a list of what are things I will do, what are things I won't do. Just make sure you're coming at it in a way that feels authentic and it's about serving and they know where you're coming from, because you don't want to be completely absent from your page. That's also something I think is an issue when you want to have a brand, but you don't ever want to be seen by them. That's hard too, because people really want to know you, like you, and trust you. They want that, and they want to be part of your community, and you have to show up not face to face, but face to screen. Ugh, that's an ugly way to say it. But that's where I say to start from. Is that good? Or do you want Mike me to go in a little bit more of the actual tools or something?
No, I think that was great. First off, you said something there that I think is really important: know, like, and trust, and that is the algorithm there. First they have to know you exist, and then they have to like you. Because let's be honest, there's no one that I trust that I don't like. Like, I feel like those two things go very, very much, hand in glove. So I think that's important. But the interesting thing was you actually kind of answered my second question by answering the first question. My second question was going to be, and I'll ask it to see if you want to expand on it. But that question was, how do you develop your authentic voice? And it sounds like that's a lot of what you were just talking about there, because I think people really resonate with authenticity. And I think that might be the only unique currency you have on social media, because there is so much noise out there. So is there anything more to say about your authentic voice beyond what you just said?
I think that I think you're right. It is a great currency we have on social media, is showing up authentically. And I think there's so many brands that I love that I get to see all the mistakes they make, the goofiness, the silliness, the ridiculous behind the scenes work. And I love that. I love seeing also when people say, hey, this is my real body, and this is how it really looks when I'm not posing, because it's important. There's so much Photoshop. It just can be a completely practically different person. It's not even makeup. It's just a program. Yeah. And especially when we're talking about health and wellness and fitness, it's very important, I feel, to show up in an authentic way with content that's also authentic. It's not too retouched or affected. I think that if you're thinking about communicating authentically, part of that is active listening, and you need to make sure you're listening to not just your community, but to yourself. And again, what really resonates, what really feels true. I think that having mood board, a journal, again, email me, DM me, get some prompts from me. I have some good branding prompts to work through, because you need to have a voice, and it's your voice and your personality. And then put voice and personality together with hopefully some nice copy and content and graphics and photos. And then we have your profile. That's what it takes.
Yeah, that's great. And what you said there about authenticity and kind of in our space, I think is so important. And I know, statistics that we talk about in the commercial club industry is that we have only roughly 15 to 20% of the American public goes to a gym or fitness center. The other 85% is just sitting there. And, I can't help but think how there's a lack of inclusivity in our messaging and our imaging. And the bulk of the people out there that I think we can help are not the, picture perfect fitness models. They are the average people that are there. And I think sometimes there's this trap to get caught by the standard, imaging and the standard messaging that's out there. So I think that's such a good point on your part.
Thank you. Yeah. Diversity and inclusion is key, as it is. When you said picture perfect, I cringed really bad inside. I was like, oh, yuck, because there is no such thing. But I understand also, picture perfect, it's literally a perfect picture. Yeah. But all bodies, all humans, everyone who breathes should also hopefully be wanting to have a healthy body that breathes. And health doesn't have to look like a giant muscle man or a 100-pound tiny blonde. Like, there is no picture that is perfect of a body. If your body breathes, your body moves, and then we would love to work with you.
Yeah, you said it. But that's a changing paradigm in our industry, because for years I worked for Valley Total Fitness in the early part of my career. And if I think back to those ads that people who are my age probably remember, like, it was all the models and, the bodybuilders. And it's just, we're starting to realize that is a path to only a lot of competition and not to helping, the vast majority of people. So I want to switch gears, because you do sit in this very interesting space of, you obviously have a very intimate knowledge of marketing and Instagram and social media, but you are also a wellness professional in the sense that you do yoga internationally. So talk maybe about some tangible examples of things you've experienced or things that you've done that have been uniquely effective for you.
in the social media space?
Yes.
Okay. So I think that, as I shared earlier, telling people what not to do, I think has been very successful, kind of saying, 5 mistakes, 5 myths of meditation, because there's a lot, can be a lot in every single, I think, industry or vector or vertical, whatever. There can be so many myths and misconceptions. I think it's very important to shine lights on those. And that's been successful for me. As well as reels have been very successful. I know it's one more thing to learn how to do, but by making a reel, which is similar to a TikTok, if that word isn't familiar for you, it's going to be like a 15 to 60-second video, micro video content. And that micro video content is the most powerful content you can create right now. Do you want me to speak a little bit about reels, Mike? Or
Yeah, absolutely. Because in all honesty, I don't really know what they are very well. So yeah, I think that would be great to give our listeners a better sense of what a reel is and maybe what some best practices are around it.
Great. Okay. So reels, again, micro video content, 15 seconds to 60 seconds, small video. I do recommend using Canva, or there's an app called InShot. And I think you pay maybe $40 for a year or $50 for life or something to use this, but you're pairing your content usually with trending audio, or you can even have it be your own voice just talking to the camera. You don't have to do anything fancy. It can just be you for 60 seconds talking about the best way to do a bicep curl.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be complicated, but you can of course make it where every 1 second it shifts to a different, you have these crazy transitions where you throw a hat and then you run and jump into the hat and you're totally in a different outfit. And all of a sudden you're in Paris and then you're all over the board. I mean, you can make it complicated, you can keep it simple, but however you want to learn how to do reels, it's going to be this micro video content will be the most successful content. Also, reels are like lottery tickets. At any time they can go viral. And that means that they have a longer shelf life than any other type of post you make. They can blow up at any time. And even there's some charts and stats that will show that your reels are likely to get way more views a few weeks after you post them instead of just 24 hours like other posting. A common myth, I'll bust one myth for our listeners, is that, I shouldn't post, 2 a day or 3 a day. I should never post more than one because I'm going to be competing with myself. A myth. That's not true. It's like having 2 horses in a race. It doubles your chances of winning with this lottery ticket. I recommend always posting 1 a day or 2 a day. Forgive me, I just had a vacation. I've been off grid for a couple of weeks, but I try to post 1 a day. Make them in batches, spend half hour, film 3 of them in a row, get them out, and then you can save them in your draft folder. So I like to save and then just click post, have it be more convenient for me. If this is a tiny bit more, what's the word? Maybe advanced, but I just would like to tell the listeners that if you're ever curious, what counts as a watch or as a view of my reel? How many seconds do they have to watch the full 60? Like what counts? It's only 3 seconds. That's what counts, 3 seconds. So if you can hook them in with some, big, like 3 mistakes you're making with downward dog, if you can hook that and just capture them for 3 seconds, then you get your quote unquote gold star of a watch view. I really also recommend utilizing your captions, have more information in there. And the best way to have the caption is broken up into, 1 sentence, 2 to 3 lines, lots of emojis to direct the eyes. And if you can get them to save them, or if they're reading your caption and then your reel is playing in the background, you get even more views because it's just playing and playing and playing. And the trending audio I mentioned is very important here. Reels has a giant library and everything. They've already done all the legal work to make sure you're legally good to be using the audio. You have to do nothing. You just look for it in the music library inside of Instagram itself, same as TikTok. And when you're in that library, they won't show you what's trending. And you're like, why? I want to know. Why can't I find that? It doesn't show it, but creators account will. And then also what will is if you're looking at reels yourself, looking at the videos, and you're scrolling, at the very bottom of the screen is going to be, we'll say, Taylor Swift, Shake It Off. You'll see it, the name of the song, in usually white font. And if you see an upwards diagonal pointed arrow, upwards diagonal, it means trending. It's like the arrow is showing, it's going up, 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 up. More people are using it. So that means trending audio. I think reels are stressful. I think being on video is stressful. I think you can make a 30-second video and it can take you an hour and you can get 200 views and it can break your heart. And I get that, but I think it's a practice. Be really compassionate with yourself, be really, really kind. You're learning a whole new skill and it's not going to come out perfect. It's always something to learn more. And there's a bunch of accounts that you can follow to teach you how to make reels. Before I even started, I'm totally embarrassed to admit it, Mike, but I think I watched like 5 hours of how to make a reel and what are the practices and how do I actually do a transition, or how do I, record 3 seconds of me in a yoga outfit and then 3 seconds of me in pajamas. Like, how do I do that? You learn these steps, but if you spend 30 minutes, or 8 minutes, it depends on how fast you pick things up. You can just on YouTube do how to make a reel on Instagram. And then there's wonderful people with wonderful accounts that will walk you through it. I know I definitely watched a lot of those.
I love it. Yeah. It's like anything else, it's a skill. And I always, whenever I talk to fitness and wellness professionals who are very kinesthetically aware and active with their body, it's the same thing as learning a sport, learning yoga poses, learning how to squat or deadlift properly. First time you did it, you weren't very good at it at all. And then I used to have a coach that said, it's nothing that 10,000 reps won't fix. And, the more you do something, the better that you get at it. And yeah, that's very interesting about reels. I actually, it's funny, Lily, I'm learning a lot here myself and thinking of my own Instagram going, man, I need to step it up a little bit. But we're coming to an end here. And there's one more question that I want to ask before we get into a couple of the concluding questions. And it's your view on how you deal with what I'll just call difficult situations on Instagram, meaning maybe a comment that's not so positive, a comment that's controversial. How do you recommend handling something like that? I would venture to say the first thing you would recommend is, pause, be mindful of your reaction, step back from the situation in a very mindful way, but maybe even more tactically than that. Like, how do you recommend dealing with those more difficult situations?
Sure. And there's actually a wonderful way, Mike, that you can quote unquote kind of protect yourself a little bit more. In Instagram, there's actually in your settings, privacy settings, security settings, you can set words that are forbidden to ever appear in your comments or in your DMs. So if you never want the word, any swear words, you can specifically type those out yourself and they will automatically be blocked from ever even appearing. You don't even see a ghost version, like they are completely stopped from being able to be posted. I recommend choosing words that you think would be particularly offensive for you. And if you fall into a certain, if you yourself, you have something that you think people would attack or be mean about and cruel about, include those words. Just make sure you never have to see them. I think protecting yourself comes first. And it's so easy for people to be so mean on social media. There's a million different now. We have research and studies, and it's just sad. It hurts knowing that people are comfortable being cruel when they can't see a face, and it makes them feel stronger. So being prepared for that and know that has nothing to do with you. I swear it has nothing to do with you and everything to do with the person making that comment and what they're going through, what they're needing, what they feel powerless. It can be a horrible situation for them, and they could be in so much pain, and they're doing this just to feel an ounce of being in control or power. Like, very sad. I agree. But in terms of if something is offensive, you can, and it's not part of your filtered out system, I would recommend just either ignoring it, deleting it, or if you choose to engage in it, because it would perhaps be something controversial that you think, if you're going to engage with it, you could just say, you're free to your opinion, I'm free to mine, or you do you. That's a very common one. You do you, I'll do me. That's okay. But again, if it's cruel, please block it, please report it, please filter it out, because no one should be subjected to torment, torture, or emotional verbal abuse on social media. You shouldn't be, even though people are every second of the day. So I guess those are my, just, yeah, delete it as much as you can. Don't engage with it. You're not going to convince them. They're just looking for a fight.
Yeah.
But if it's something a little controversial, you do you, or you're entitled to your opinion. I'm entitled to mine. Thank you for the gift of your presence and attention. Be well. Send them good vibes. Just be well.
I love it. That's a little short masterclass there in tact and politics on some level. So yeah, you do you is probably the easiest way to move past that discussion. And it is really good to hear about those filters. That's actually something that I didn't personally know about, and that seems like a great way to not even have to come across those issues and potentially be triggered. Awesome. Well, Lily, we're almost out of time here, and before we wrap up, I do want to be able to let people know where they can go to find out more about you, not just in terms of what you do marketing wise, but also your podcast and your international yoga work. Again, I think this will resonate with a lot of people who are listening. So where can we go to find out more about you?
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I have a website, wildyogatribe.com, and a podcast, Wild Yoga Tribe podcast. And that's on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Deezer, Stitcher, wherever you're listening, my podcast will be there. And I'm on social media at Wild Yoga Tribe on almost all platforms, and LinkedIn at Lily Allen-Duenas or Wild Yoga Tribe. So please reach out. I would love to answer questions or send you those adjectives to check out, help you with a few questions. If you're doing some brand awareness, stewardship, or strategy, happy to help. I do freelance work if you really need some help. And I do work with clients as I'm based in France. I do a lot of work one-on-one with private classes for yoga, meditation, or if you even wanted to take a deep dive into chakra work, I mean, I'm happy to schedule private classes with people. I do private holistic health and wellness coaching, and I'm a vegan nutritionist. So if you're interested in making a transition to being vegan or vegetarian, I'm happy to help talk to you a little bit more about that. And see how I can serve you. I'm all ears. I'm at your service, and I just want to help you feel healthy, whole, and well.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah. Get some marketing help, and then, get some help with your spirit at the same time. It's a very unique combination. Last question before we go. It's the question that I always end the podcast on, because it's the premise of my podcast, which is the fact that there is not anywhere enough interaction between fitness and wellness professionals and medical professionals. And although, maybe this is not directly in your scope, I think it's something you have a view of, given everything that you just said. If you could talk to fitness and wellness professionals out there and to provide one piece of advice as to maybe how to bridge the gap between, that divide between them and medical professionals, what would that piece of advice be from your perspective?
I would say do your research. I don't know if I'm a fitness professional. I'm a yoga teacher. Mm-hmm. I read so much. And I do my absolute best to become as educated as I can about the anatomy and about the actual physiological responses in our bodies to stress. I want to be able to talk to my students. In this pose, you're getting a little compression on your thyroid, which is blah, 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 right? I want to be able to go down into those rabbit holes with them. They have a question about their intercostal muscles, and they're like, why is this? Or my quadratus laborum is pulling. I want to be able to answer. So I think if you're looking to bridge the gap, the best way to do that is with education and research, and just becoming as comfortable as you can in in the medical realm in a way, but also, of course, always direct people to medical professionals, and have maybe in your Rolodex, who has one of those? I will high five anyone virtually who has a Rolodex.
I don't think you're going to be high fiving a lot of people.
Probably not. But if you have in your Rolodex a friend who is a doctor or a nurse, and you can field a couple questions off of them, great. And whenever I go into a chiropractor, I geek out. I'm like, okay, let's talk about this and this and this. And, we just chat about questions I have about the body. I love it. I love having beautiful people, wonderful humans in my life who can answer my questions and then help me help my clients even better.
I love it. Yeah. It comes down to education and being able to speak a similar language to them. Lily, thank you so much for joining us on the Wellness Paradox.
Thanks, Mike. It has been a joy to be with you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Lily as much as I did. If you found it insightful and valuable, please do share with your friends and colleagues. Those shares make a huge difference for us. Any of the information that Lily shared can be found on the show notes page at wellnessparadoxpod.com/episode 28. Please be on the lookout for next week's episode when it drops on Wednesday. And if you have a second, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast platforms. Those reviews are critical to helping us proliferate our message to the fitness and the wellness community. Until we chat again next week, please be well.